to anywhere in 1996. And those have been well received in North America, including Eden, which is a classic now in North America and sold out in about the first year. We are working on a revised copy or revised edition of Eden for the 21st anniversary, and I hope we can find the time for it. It's almost finished on Irvin's side, and I must say I'm remiss about getting everything together. But on my side, I have, and I should have within the next 60 to 90 days, a collection of short stories, which are also thinly veiled reportage-type stories of the past 25 years of Dominican history that I was part and parcel of, and that should be coming out shortly.
More phone calls for Gabriel Christian. Let's go to Kings Hill. Good evening.
Good evening, Lennox.
Good evening.
I'm so crazy, I over crazy and I pass crazy. I'm not calling about the program tonight because I do not know what you're talking about tonight. I make all the effort in the world on Saturday night to leave all where I was to come to town to see my program, and I couldn't see nothing on the screen. I'm not asking you to take care of that for me. I know how to take care of that for myself. I was taken back. I was not happy because that is my program. When I come here to say what's about program Lennox and I don't see it, I get vexed. I could well stay in Portsmouth. We have channels we cannot afford to watch, but we haven't got your kind of channel. So I come in down to look for your kind of channel, and I came down on Saturday and I couldn't see anything.
But what happened? What happened?
But the reception was miserable. You couldn't see. I couldn't even see you. I put on channel 5 and I cannot see you.
There are a lot of people on the screen, right?
Well, I just could not see nothing on the screen.
Okay.
I called, they gave me a number to call, and all this kind of stuff.
So that has been rectified. You're seeing us tonight, right?
Well, that's why I called in you. If I was not seeing you tonight, I would not call you.
Very good.
But I didn't see you on Saturday night, and I was vexed about that because I live all the way, all those miles, just to come to town to see my program, and I did not see the program. When I was in Portsmouth to enjoy all the program in the world, and I come to look for my program, I didn't see it.
All right.
I vexed about that.
Well, we apologize for that, and hopefully it doesn't happen again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Well, Lennox, you're very much loved. I mean, here's someone who's a fanatic.
This guy calls every time he's close to the telephone and this program is on. He calls.
So he's a regular.
Yeah, he's a regular, and we have a lot of regulars around. We have some regulars from Canefield and from different Pottersville.
Right. It's the same thing on the other side. You have people who are wedded to programs because of the host and the manner in which the host distinguishes himself in the execution of duties.
This is just the only one we have, so
Okay.
Now, we were talking about the future and your writing and stuff. So
yes.
You're getting some stuff together now.
Well, it's very important because I want to put a plug in there for Frontline and before Frontline, Lennox Honeychurch, and before Lennox Honeychurch, people who kept up the oral tradition. Lennox's Dominica Story on Radio Dominica, which is what DBS was called then, sort of laid the basis for a keen sense of Dominican nationhood and nationalism in the 1970s. An awareness of self, I believe, is always relevant to where it is one goes, and he laid that base. In the late 1970s, early 80s, myself, Eddie Toulon, Milton Elwa, Melvin Didier, Sonny Felix, who has passed on, and others got together and founded Frontline Bookstore Cooperative, to bring books, school books to school children at a reasonable rate. It was a sort of quasi social justice, progressive socialist sort of concept, and B, to bring in books on black consciousness and progressive politics and make those available. And I'm happy to say that after almost 15 plus 17, almost 20 years, Frontline is still with us. Of course, there are issues, as with every organization, but Mr. Toulon and Mr. Seeley and the other people who are there now have told me that they intend to get students at the student councils, which we were very much involved in the 1970s. We had student government, and we had student activism, and we had National Youth Council activism. They said to me that they would bring the students on board to sort of infuse new blood into Frontline, so that the tradition of reading that Ms. Nicholas, I believe the principal of the DCHS, the Dominican Community High School, talked about last Friday during Teachers' Day, which is solely being, I guess, disregarded. It's a sore point with teachers that students don't read as much. So the tradition of reading and reading widely is followed, because I credit my success with not only the teachers and the parents I had and the uncles I had, like H.L. Christian, who unfortunately passed recently. I didn't get to meet him, and L.M. Christian, the musician, who's not too well but is hanging in there. That love of reading and that curiosity for learning is what has spawned the successes that we see among a lot of Dominican professionals at home and abroad. And so the writing...
But these people grew up in a different time. it could almost be argued that the need to read is much less now, notwithstanding the fact that reading has many benefits.
I've heard that
People have read over the years because they cherish the spirit of inquiry. They wanted to know.
Yes.
These days, a lot of things come to them in ways that are a lot easier than reading. They watch television.
Yes.
And it's all there before their eyes.
Yeah, but I think pedagogues and people who would do this thing of education for a living and who would be even more eloquent than I would be would tell you, and it's a big debate in the United States now, that one cannot replace the book. It's never offline, down the line, or have the sort of technical problems that this guy told you about he had with his program last Saturday. It's something you can do by candlelight. But more than that, it's a multifaceted conversation with oneself. You've got a monologue when you look at the tube. Similarly, except if you get into a chat room sort of context on the internet, it's a one-way type deal. When you read a book, your imagination soars, it flows. I mean, I've been to many countries in the world in my mind that I never will physically ever go to through reading. And so while I concede your point, and I believe it's a very well-made point, that we now have a multimedia society where we have the internet, we have the television.
But don't miss my
movies.
point. My point also is that reading, the discipline of reading,
Yes.
is so important to who we are inside and,
Yes.
and to the development of certain mental attributes.
Yes.
That we need to find a way to keep it.
That's exactly why we have been energized, Andre and myself and others who we will be including in the Pontcasse press lineup shortly, have found the time to keep. We can't have Lennox do it alone. I mean, Lennox has been working in the vineyards for a long time, God bless his soul, along with others like Al-Azhar and of course, you know, there's Stowe and they're the frontline poets who have been in ramparts, including Eddie Tulor himself, published poetry. In fact, tonight there's a World Poetry Day festival, I think, at Caribana. I was invited to that, but of course, I had to be on the program, and I hope that there's a TV screen there so you can perhaps call in. But we do have a tradition of reading and writing in this country that we want to expand on, and I believe in putting forth information that is Dominica-centered, that deals with the issues of underdevelopment, the issues of environmental protection that Arthur Martin and others with the CSA, the Conservation Society, have been doing, that we can rescue for Dominica minds, young, impressionable minds that may be somehow detracted or distracted or taken away from our focus by television. Television is a wonderful tool, but we ought to use it as a device for our liberation, not a device to dull us and dull our sensibilities to our current context.
Let's go back to some phone calls. Pottersville, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Gabriel.
Good evening, my friend. Obviously, you know me, so I...
Of course.
Thank you.
You used to be in Pottersville.
That's right.
When you used to live with your mom. I know you're very adored. It's important.
Thank you, man.
The question is, as the past, I know you were the past president of the youth movement before.
The National Youth Council?
Yes.
I wasn't president of the National Youth Council, you know, Pierre Charles was, but I was a delegate to the National Youth Council.
Right.
I was president of the...
executive of that council.
You were the executive?
Yes, as president of the United Student Council and the Student Federation, I was, yes.
Right. I can remember this. As a young person, what you would advise the young people of Dominica, as a professional person now, having followed the movement, and now we have experience in law, what you would advise these people to achieve what they really want to achieve presently?
Very good question, you know, and thank you very much for the call. It's taken an entire evening to deal with that, but I believe, first of all, it starts with self-knowledge. Huh? Where Irving stands and where I stand and where a lot of the people who've gone on and done well stand, is they stand on the shoulders of those who went before, who had a sense of self. And what does that mean? Well, it means having a sense of identity, who we are. If we are Afro-Caribbean, we need to have a strong sense of our African identity. The Carib people, as we said in Eden, have done a great job through Carib Food and other groups to have a sense of where they came from. We didn't start with Columbus. We predated that. So a strong sense of self-identity. And what that means is that you have to go out there and inform yourself. You know, ignorance is a very expensive vocation, and we cannot, certainly life does not suffer fools lightly. And so that means that students have to be involved in the issues of their time. We cannot afford as a country to have students who are not involved in issues of national development, ecology, foreign exchange income and how we grow that, science and technology. We had a group, Cadre 1, back in the student days, where we would look at DCP, which is where you work also, Lennox, and hold it up as an example of an entrepreneur who used local technology with government support and built a product that eventually we could be proud of. I mean, it wasn't always the case. I remember when Lifebuoy and Lux and all these other soaps which were foreign, they had the day, and it was very difficult to penetrate that thick market and that mindset it's a colonial mindset that nothing Dominican was good. And so the Dominican student, to answer his question, has to really be introspective, have a strong sense of self, really apply his or herself at school, so you academically make the best of what is available, and frankly, be daring. Fortune favors the brave. Don't be circumspect. Don't bridle your curiosity. Don't be willing to engage new ideas. Don't be lackadaisical about setting up organizations. The teachers shouldn't have to do for you, and the government shouldn't have to do for you. You should be a power base unto yourself while working with teachers, obviously, giving them the respect that they deserve and they desire, while working with government, because the government provides the platform upon which the education process takes place. But students need to have student councils that are strong. And I think you know what we did in the 70s. We frankly, to a great degree, helped rescue our country from rescue our country in a great many ways, and with regard to a great many issues of the day, and the history of that has been written.
Yeah.
So sense of self, purposefulness with regard to academic pursuits, reading again, I come back to that, read widely, and frankly, be involved in organization. That's important.
All right, we're talking with Gabriel Christian, trial lawyer in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, president of the Dominican Association of Washington, D.C., founding member and general counsel to the Institute of Caribbean Studies. He's an author as well, and we're taking your phone calls back in just a moment.
Do you know of a place where your dollar can do this? At Burton & Company, the electric shop, that's the only place where your dollar has that power. Choose the best name brand, quality, home appliances, and everything more for less than other places. The range is truly incredible, and there's something for everyone's pocket. All within the range of your dollar. Come to Burton & Company on Castle Street, where your dollar has the power.
A regional study concluded that Protex is the #1 antibacterial soap used by doctors in their clinics and also in their homes to protect their families. Doctors trust Protex because, unlike other soaps, Protex eliminates more bacteria. Protex, the #1 antibacterial soap recommended by doctors. Protex, for the good health of your skin.
Puchi mun ka kwe pou fè business epi Central Alphonsus Credit Union. Nou bese lete wan moun nou pou pay sou loan. Lower loan interest rates. Nou ka offer service ki exceptional. Central Alphonsus Credit Union. La men ki mele kontou an ta ki defesel. Telephone 82261.
Welcome back to What About? We're live at Marpin Television Studios in Daniel, sharing the hour with Gabriel Christian, trial lawyer in the Washington, D.C. area. You left here in the early 1980s, back in the latter part of the 70s was a very active time for young people like yourself who were involved in, I think you like to term it the struggle, right?
The struggle. I mean, you know, I'll be honest with you. I mean, a lot of people said we were communists, that we were Soviet agents. I never met a Soviet, frankly. We were Cuban agents. I never met a Cuban until I was 17. And, you know, that's sort of disparaging. It was the time of the Cold War. And, you know, I know that the Freedom Party and other parties have played the anti-communist card, and I mean, they've been honest enough, and these people are all my friends, you know, I speak with them, they're Dominicans, I love them, and I agree to disagree with them, but I believe that in that phase that there's a lot of self-inflicted wounds that we, in fact, had imposed on the body politic, because people refused to argue issues and got into disparaging attacks on character, the politics of political mipwina, so to speak. And that hurt the national development process to a great
But
deal.
the development you saw for Dominica was coming to you more clearly through a socialist type of agenda.
And this is the reason, and I'll tell you the reason for that, and I have no apologies to make for that. If I had to live my life again, I think I would have done the same thing. Maybe we would have done it a little differently. We would have been a little more nuanced. But we were doing what we were doing out of love. We came into a country where, after almost 200 years, we had a handful of university graduates, where you'd have one person who was super smart get a scholarship to Britain. And I'll tell you incidentally that Dominica now has more university graduates due to the Cuban Revolution than graduated from British schools in 200 years. And that's an indictment. And I mean, I'm coming from a very pro-British family. My father served in the British Army in World War II. He's very proud to wear his poppy every Memorial Day. And many Dominicans died, including grammar school boys, fighting to protect Britain's interest and quote-unquote democracy during World War II. But here it is, we were being exploited, and we were not being served well. Dominica at one point was the premier producer of limes, and we saw none of that profit remain in the country for in-country development. So we grew up under very poor conditions. I mean, relative to other countries, maybe not as poor, but for what we could have produced during that time and the access that we could have been given as a loyal British colony and as loyal British subjects, we did not get. And we were not fools. We saw that. We didn't like it. And we wanted to see a government that was focused on things like land reform. The land tenure system had not changed much from the days of slavery. We wanted government to focus on higher education because we realized it was by building up a technical cadre that we could deal with issues of utilizing indigenous material for local production in light industry to add to a export base that wasn't merely that of raw material export or a monocrop economy as in bananas. So those are the things that troubled us. And I remember we had a lot of discussions as young people, and that was because we had great love for our people. We saw a condition that we did not like, and we said social justice, yes. Independence, yes. Economy that was owned by Dominicans primarily, yes. Support for small businesses where we had a local stake, yes. So those are things now that governments see as normative. Government now has established relations with Cuba. You don't have to go through the back door anymore to study in Cuba. The government now has stood up against the blockade of the Cuban Revolution. There's a lot of talk now about women's rights. There's a National Women's Council. I like that. We didn't have that when I grew up. There are now programs for farmers that SPAT, a non-governmental organization, and the government itself engages in. The Freedom Party government, to its great credit, did a summer program, my mother told me about that, of adult education, so that even if you've gone through the school process, you can still come in and get additional skills training so we can increase the level of literacy in the country. So a lot of the things that we said then that seemed radical then are now accepted as perfectly normal and acceptable in the political discourse.
More phone calls. Watton Waven, good evening.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Linton. How are you?
Good.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Christian. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm okay, sir.
Thank you.
Actually, I was looking at our local news tonight, and you were on and you were talking about certain things to do with the fact that the U.S. government is now directing the resources to the European countries and so on.
Yes.
And you made some reference that Dominica, or we as Dominicans should find ways harnessing resources from the U.S. government. Remember that?
Yes. You want to raise your voice a little bit, though, because I told Lennox I have some sweet Dominican river water in my right ear.
I guess Lennox is listening, so he will be able to relate to you.
Right.
What I want to know is, would you care to maybe share some more information, maybe some more specifics, and maybe tell us whether you've made recommendations to government, and maybe tell us a little more as to what you think could be done in that particular area?
Very good question. I have met with the Prime Minister, and I have met with other government officials from time to time when they visited Washington. And one of the main things we have to remember is the American political system is very multi-layered and very flexible in dealing with issues like that. If the state of Israel or Korea has a problem, the governments make official representation to the United States at the State Department level. But at the same time, they do this. Since it's a multi-ethnic country, they rally their locals or their nationals or allies within the body politic of the United States to put pressure at the base, which is a congressional level. So that not only do you have the representation at the State Department level, which is diplomatic level and so on, but they have their national organizations do things that would foster the interests of the relevant nation state, be it Ireland, be it Korea, be it China, be it Israel. And so what I said was we ought to be able to develop a systematic relationship with our government so that our government can see fit to utilize the associations, not only in the Washington, D.C. area, but all across the United States, to foster Dominica's interest wherever that may arise from time to time. But there's a more important point I made. You know, I've always said, I said it in Eden, I've said it to those who know me well, and I've always held that belief very strongly, that there's no real replacement for self-reliance, that it's fine for us to make representation and say to the United States it's in its national security interest to assist islands like ours so we don't become havens for drug lords and so on. But we have nationals in the United Kingdom. We have nationals in St. Martin, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and other Caribbean islands. We have nationals in the United States. We have nationals in Canada. Well, what can we do with those nationals if they're organized? A tremendous amount of things. We can get a whole lot of foreign exchange income if the government can set up a facility. And I'll tell you, in Eden, I dealt with the Eagle Fund and the Chaconia Fund, Eagle being Jamaican, Chaconia being Trinidadian, where the private sector set up a sort of mutual/money market type fund that nationals in foreign countries could put monies in. That money would be invested in a variety of infrastructure and utility projects. And so the country would be getting foreign exchange income, and the overseas national would be having an investment and a stake other than just sending a dollar here and dollar there to a relative. That's one thing that we can encourage. We can also encourage, as I said earlier in the program, the sort of technical exchange. So yes, we have to pursue the United States to have it understand our peculiar condition on the banana issue. But we also, and I believe that was the stress that I made, we have to link up. The government has to appoint someone who will be solely responsible for liaising with Dominican nationals overseas through their representative organizations. The private sector, Lennox, has to do the same thing, because that is the way. It's a great deal more, I think, in the long term than we would on any sort of aid package that the United Kingdom, the United States, or Canada might give off at any one time.
Goodwill, good evening.
Yes, good evening. Gabriel, I'm trying to bring back to your memory the cadet days.
How are you, my friend?
Okay, not bad.
Good.
I'm trying to understand from your perspective I'm trying to get from you, how did the cadet corps help you? Because I'm grown adult today, and I'm trying to understand why isn't the government bringing back the cadet corps? I know this helped us a lot as just young men, with our identity as young men a lot. And then today, we have nothing for young men to do in that area. First of all, identity, to bring out dignity, values, and so on in young men today in Dominica. Could you tell us how the cadet corps assisted you in those days?
You know, this is a beautiful, thank you very much, my brother. This is a beautiful question. In the back of my scalp's scrolling, because there's so much to be said, and I think there ought to be an hour on your program with some former cadet officers to deal with that issue. I was speaking to a young Dominican in New York the other day, and he didn't know what the cadet corps was. And that goes back to, again, to written history. Of course, it's in the record now because we're making the record. But the cadet corps was a seminal experience in my life. I'll repeat it again. The cadet corps was a seminal experience, and by that I mean a very important foundation-laying type of experience. It laid a foundation with regard to how to deal with issues under adverse conditions, how to be patient in the pursuit of objectives, how to be careful in planning, how to have strategic thinking, and how to be overall disciplined in the pursuit of a particular exercise. It was a paramilitary organization, and if there was any time that we needed the cadet corps, from what I've seen for the few days that I've been here, we need it now. I've spoken to the government before, back in the days of the Freedom Party. They said that it may have been a little too expensive, but they were considering it. The current government has said that it has considered it, and they've made a cabinet decision. As to whether that's true or not, I don't know, and I'd like some government official to maybe deal with this in the press or call in on the program, because I'll tell you this, I've seen great change in my country. I've seen great change for good. I've seen great infrastructural development. But I know we will miss out on our ability to succeed in the 21st century if we don't have a core of young people who are disciplined, who will be so-called young Turks, as Kemal Atatürk, the father of modern Turkey, was. And that is what comes from being immersed in a cadet corps paramilitary organization that's focused not on the Crown, but on the Cicero, on the Green Mountains, on the rivers, on the National Development Project, on education, on a core set of values that says to a young person, you don't have to deal with drugs, you don't have to wear all those fancy clothes, and you don't have to be foul-mouthed to be a person, and you don't have to be anything else but yourself and be proud of who you are, to be neat and to be clean, to really achieve in life. And no disrespect to my other brothers who may have bad memories of military type organizations, but in every country, in every serious civilization, you need to have a core of people that really are trained in a way that appreciates patriotism, that appreciates service, not me, but service. Service is important, and that cadet corps experience is very important and helped me be where I am today. Thank you
Roseau,
for the question.
hello.
Hey, good evening, Gabriel.
Good evening, my friend. How are you, my brother?
Last time we communicated, it was the internet, you remember?
Well, the internet has been a great tool for Dominicans who have been scattered all over the globe, and I'm happy that we were able to make that contact.
Yeah. Hi, Lawrence. Lennox. Good evening, too.
Hi.
Yeah, Gabriel, I want to congratulate you on your persistence, continuing to read and to follow the cause, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
To dedicate yourself to the cause and to the country. That's really a significant thing on your part and the other guys. I know you've had any chance to assess the local writing landscape, and if you have any comments to make on what you've seen coming out from Dominica recently, in terms of whether there's anything new, different, or any improvement in the quality of the work that's being produced now, you know? And perhaps I want to make some comment on that.
Well, first of all, thank you for the call, and certainly no backsliders on my train. This train, along with the train of Lennox and others, this train is headed for Zion, and we're not going to go back, and we won't sell out the cause. It's we are relentless on that point. But with regard to local writing, I know that Mr. Lazar has come out with a book, and I know that Raglan Rivera's book was reviewed by him in today's Independent, I believe it was. So I know that there is somewhat of a renaissance. I mean, look at this. I mean, when I grew up, Lennox, we had Lennox Sunday Church's first book, The Dominica Story. We, of course, had White Sargasso Sea and so on and Tigers Are Better Looking, I think, by Gene Rees. And that was about it. Then every little national day, thank God for the Lee Blair government, because he was a Dominican patriot and did a lot for culture. You'd have the little poetry thing, and he did 2 or 3 magazines, Diaz Dominica. But that was about it. But I went to Frontline today, and I saw about almost a dozen books by Dominicans. We have Toulon, we have Stowe, we have Lazar, we have, of course, Gene Rees, and we have Lennox with his 3rd book, and he's had other books added to that. And we've had several other Dominican poets, the Frontline poets, for instance. And so there is a ferment. I've seen improvement. I believe improvement will come as the Dominican population becomes even more better educated. I mean, one of the things that's fascinating, Lennox, about being home now is almost every student of mine that I've met have gone on to do something for themselves with regard to higher education. A few have fallen between the cracks with regard to that very pernicious drug trade and drug use. And that actually is a counter-revolutionary crime. I mean, drug use and drug abuse is a betrayal of the hopes and aspirations of our people. And I tell every single brother out there who has any doubts about that to look at what has happened to our brothers in the African-American community, how that has inhibited a lot of the progress on that side, and will do the same thing to us. And look at what has happened to Colombia. So, but what he has said with regard to the local scene draws one comment for me, and that is I have seen a lot of good, and I'm looking for greater things to come.
All right, final break for word from our sponsors. Time flies. We're going to come back to wrap it up in just a moment.
Thank you.
Good, okay, what color is the grass?
Green!
What color is my sweater?
Blue!
What color are my teeth?
Beige. Off-white. Stucco. Now they're all pale.
No matter how great your smile is, don't you wish it could be whiter? Introducing Colgate Sensation White. It has a special ingredient that gently breaks down stains that can discolor teeth.
Let's try this again.
For whiter teeth, Colgate Sensation White.
Well, welcome back to What About? We're live at Marpin Television Studios in Daniel. Gabriel Christian is our guest. He lives in Washington, D.C. That's the stomping ground of Bill Clinton these days. What's up with the guy?
Well, Brother Bill, I tell you, one has to be careful. Bill Clinton has been the American president who's been, in recent years, closest to the African-American community. I met the man in 1992, the President of the United States at a fundraiser, because the partner at my firm was the chairman of the Democratic Party in Prince George's County, which is one of the counties that adjoins the District of Columbia. Thomas Farrington, deceased, God bless his soul. So I met the president in his campaign. And Bill Clinton grew up during the civil rights era. His wife is a very politically progressive person. And you can see and sense his comfort level among African Americans. They know it and he knows it. And it's not by accident that whenever he's in trouble, he goes to an African American church and holds hands